when I was 19, I met someone who was 21 years older than me and ended up dating them for a couple months before everything came to a head when I ended up pregnant and he ended up in prison because of me. I did end up getting an abortion and picking myself up and putting myself back together. My abortion was the easiest and hardest part of this experience.
The only real thing that I want to put up a boundary about is talking about his story and what he went through. There's going to be things that I'll reveal about things that I found out as I found out. But when it comes to what landed him in prison and all of that stuff, I would really like to leave that out. Same with his family. I want to leave his family out of it as well. So
okay.
Those are the boundaries I set up.
So why don't you just start where you want to start, and I'll jump in.
Awesome. I'll start with how I ended up in the circumstances to meet him. So I was in a long-term relationship with someone for about a year, maybe a little bit more. And we broke up. I lived with him, so I had to move out.
When you were 19?
When I was 19, yes. This was in spring of 2019. So spring of 2019, my ex and I broke up, and I had to go live with my parents again. I had options. I could have lived on my own, but I was really broken from that relationship. A lot of self-esteem issues, a lot of codependency issues, I guess, is really the best way to put it. So I really needed to figure out my own independence again. So I decided to move with my parents. Well, my parents were moving from where I went to high school in this area all the way 45 minutes to an hour away. So it was completely an area that I didn't know. And it's called Greeley, Colorado. So I know that means nothing to you, but it might mean something to someone listening.
Yeah.
In the sense of it's cow town. They slaughter cows there, so it smells terrible. I decided I needed to get a job. I was going to the local community college for a little bit, and honestly, I wasn't finding friends there. I had the hardest time making friends at community college. Everyone was a little older than me. Everyone was a little bit younger than me. It was this awkward age I was at. So I decided that I was going to get a job at Panera Bread.
Nice.
Panera Bread. It was right around the corner from my community college. I could easily work shifts before and after school. So that's why I chose that. Well, I met him there. That's where I met him.
Did he work there? Okay. He wasn't a patron.
No.
Getting the mac and cheese.
There.
Got it.
Exactly. He worked there. And he was someone I didn't really notice at first. No one was really talking to me there. There was a bunch of kids around my age there, but no one that really took an interest in me. They all had their own friends and previous relationships. So I was just the new girl, just chilling. And he decided to take a special interest in me. He decided to talk to me a lot. He would ask me questions, and I didn't think much of it because I knew he was older than me. I didn't know how much older, but I did know he was older than me. He was also slightly shorter than me. He was 5'6" and I'm 5'8". So I wasn't exactly picturing him in that light at the time. And so he just kept talking to me more and more. And one day we were standing in the back room where the employees leave their food and drinks. And he was picking up a drink cup and about to take a drink. And on his hand right here, there was a number and it said 1978. And if you do the math, that's about 21 to 22 years older than me. So
did he confirm that was his birth year?
Well, I kind of laughed and I said, "Is that your birth year?" And he goes, "Yeah, it is." And I was like, "That makes you 42." And he laughs. He goes, "You're really good at math." I was like, "No, that's the year my mom was born." So, kind of just to add an element to it, my mom is the exact same age as him. They're weeks apart in birthdays.
Wow,
so.
I can't wait till we get to your mom's reaction.
Right. Yeah, so he's as old as my mom. I'm learning stuff about him because he's sharing things about his life with me, just simple stuff like he's an artist and, I'm just finding out little bits and that he's really into tattooing. I know that's what he does because I have tattoos and I previously at that time had just gotten this tattoo. So we fast forward to about November, December time of 2019.
Wait, but just to back up for a second, when the conversations were starting at Panera and it was just kind of this friendship vibe, did you like that friendship? Did you just think of it like, oh, this is like a weird older brother vibe?
It wasn't necessarily a weird older brother vibe. It was like, this is the first person to talk to me and try to make friends with me since I moved here in June. It's, I've been we're talking like September time, and I moved in June. So this is my first friend around here. And honestly, I lost touch with everyone from high school. I really didn't have friends anymore. So it was just this really rough time personally. So he was there. He talked to me. He took an interest in me. And honestly, some of the people I worked with up at the front, because I was a front cashier, were really mean to me. So it was very nice to have a friendly face when I like went to go get a drink of water or something.
So you started there in what month?
I decided October 4th. And I remember because I was a manager there in the future, so
congratulations.
That date comes up. Yeah.
But okay, so we're October, this friendship starts, and then around the holidays, so we're talking like December now is where we're gonna go.
Yes. So in December, I kind of start to figure out that he likes me. I guess I'm starting to get this vibe of flirtiness, and he's just giving me more flirtatious eyelash batting, and asking me if I want him to make me food and so forth. So
were you into it?
I didn't know.
Yeah. That's always the worst one. It's like, do I like the attention? Because at this point you objectively have no friends at the place you're working. In this community, this person's giving you attention.
Yeah.
That must have felt really good.
It did, because everyone at the store loved him. So him giving me attention started giving other people the idea to talk to me.
Isn't it funny that in the microscopic world that we can get ourselves into of like Panera bread in small town Colorado, that it becomes like, he's a celebrity here. Yeah.
Exactly.
He's the hot guy. Yeah.
Yes. He's the hot shit around Panera bread and Greeley at the time. So it started to get people to talk to me, and this girl, Anitra, befriended me, and she was, pretty cool with him at work, and so we were texting all the time, hanging out, and she ended up becoming close between us, and she's actually the one who kind of let me know that he liked me, because I think I was kind of avoiding looking at it the right way.
Yeah.
So she's like, hey, I think he likes you, and I just like laughed it off, and I was like, okay, sure. And then we get to January, and and at this point I just started a new job. So I was working part-time at Panera, and I was working part-time as a nanny. So I was nannying, and he wasn't seeing me as much because I kind of reduced my hours at Panera because my pay was better as a nanny.
Yeah.
Kind of to paint a picture of who he is the cool guy. He is laid back, chill. He's really into rap music. He really likes style, so he really loves shoes, he loves clothes, he's just really into style. And also he has these weird quirks. He does not spell out the word I, like when he's talking about himself, like the letter itself. He spells it EYE. And I remember that really annoying me, because I was like, what the fuck? And I started to kind of like him because we started finding out more things about each other. I found out he went to college and he has a degree in graphic design, and that he really loves to paint and draw, and so do I. I love painting. I love drawing. And he also told me that he decided he liked me because I was wearing these high tops that had paint all over them. So it was just by him observing me that he decided that I was a cool person, which is kind of random, but
kind of also what you needed at that time.
Yeah,
like I get it.
It did. And turns out we actually had a lot in common. He grew up in areas that I grew up in. I moved about 13 times in my childhood, so like I lived in a lot of different places in Colorado. And so therefore he grew up in a lot of those places I grew up. So we could talk about restaurants, we could talk about corners, we could talk about hangout spots. And granted, he was like, a whole person, a drinking age person.
Yeah.
Older than me, but we still had stuff in common. And then we kind of get to the part where I want to hang out in person to kind of see where this is going to go, because I'm not satisfied with just getting to know each other over text and talking at work. When we talk at work, there's eyes on you. Everyone's gossiping, like, what are they doing? So I really wanted that one-on-one time outside of work. Well, he was being sketchy. He was being very avoidant of hanging outside of work. He wasn't being clear about what he wanted. And so I just kind of got frustrated, and eventually he gave in and he set a date. He had to stop by work before he met up with me. So he said, let's meet at Starbucks next door. And I was like, okay, that's fine. We'll meet there. He comes over. He's nervous. He's not acting like himself at work. He's not the cool guy anymore. He's kind of like the kid that's like, nervous around this girl, which made no sense because that's the opposite of his personality. He pays in cash, which I know is like a normal thing. And I pay in cash because I like my tips. But this is important to the like story, is that he only pays in cash. He has no cards in his wallet. He just has cash and an ID. And then we go sit down, and eventually he goes, I have to tell you something. And when anyone says that sentence,
never good.
Your heart drops. Yeah, like, I'm just like, what the
It's never like, I just won the lottery, and I'm going to give you $6 million of my $12 million win. Yeah.
That would have been a better thing to drop than what he dropped on me. He tells me, he's like, I really hope no one at work has told you, but there's a small chance you already know. I really want to be the person that tells you and explains myself. And my mind is racing. I'm like, what is it? What can this possibly be? And he drops the bomb that he is in a halfway house. He lives in a halfway house. And the reason he lives in a halfway house is because 3 years prior, he got convicted of a felony for something he didn't do, but he did do something, just not the thing he got convicted for.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. It's Molly. The audio cut out for 5 minutes on Raquel's side. So just to fill you in, they went on their first date, and he aggressively made out with her in the car, and then said that he had to go back to Panera. Okay.
He tells me he has to go back to Panera after our date. And I was like, why? And I finally asked the question because I didn't know why he went there before work. And it turns out when you're in a halfway house, you cannot leave for any reason. You have to leave with permission. And basically the only reason you can leave is to see your probation officer, to find a job, or to go to your job. So he goes to his job. He told them he was going to work. So when he went to Panera first, he actually asked the managers if they would lie for him and say that he was at work if they called. And he called them to tell them there because they time him. So he's like, hey, I'm going to work. And then he has to like walk, ride his bike, or take a public transportation to get to Panera. And then he has to call them and tell them, hey, I'm at work. But it's not any allotted amount of time. He has to tell them like, hey, I'm walking. So they give him X amount of time to walk. So forth.
So he went to your boss, both of your bosses, and did he say, I'm going on a date with my coworker? Can you lie?
I have no idea. I don't think they knew until they knew type of thing. Like, I don't think they knew.
But I'm like, why would they lie for him unless it was something that they wanted?
Well, you have to remember, he was the star of Panera.
That's
Everyone
true.
loved him.
He was.
Yeah.
He was the Brad Pitt of Panera. Yeah.
Okay. Exactly. Everyone loved him. The managers loved him. And he was a hard worker. So definitely had him in his pocket.
On this first date, did you ask anything aside from his jail time? Were you asking, like, do you have kids? Why aren't you married? You know, I know it's a first date, but just like any baseline other than we grew up in the same type of town. Oh, and you were in prison?
I did ask him, like, do you have kids? Were you ever married? And I did find out those answers. Like, he was never married, but he had a really long-term girlfriend for, like, I think it was 12 years. And he met her in high school. So they were high school sweethearts. Okay. And then he's had other relationships since then. But the theme of these relationships is they're all younger. They never age. He ages, but the girls never age. And now I like think back about it and I'm like, I'm not going to tell anyone what his intentions were because I have zero clue. But I am going to say you only date younger women for a handful of reasons, because no old woman your age or respectfully within your age range is going to date you because they see through your bullshit. Or you haven't been able to grow up and you can only really see things through a 20-something-year-old's eyes. Yeah. So like those are the reasons I've come up with. Or you're a pervert and you like teenagers. Yeah. Like those are the three.
Yeah. So you have this first date. The makeout's a little rougher than you would have wanted, but looking back, you understand why it was that, even though that's so horrible of that power dynamic. Then what happens?
My dog dies in January 18th. My childhood dog passes away.
The worst.
And I was sad, and he comforted me. He was very nice, and he was there. He was like the shoulder to cry on. And
was he there though? Because he's only able to go certain places.
So he wasn't there when my dog died. I ended up having to go back to work because I had a shift. and I didn't want to do my shift, but I had to, and I was like pretty much like a shell of a person. And he noticed and asked me what happened, and we talked about it, and he was really comforting in that moment, and that made me happy. And then we can fast forward to February, which is Valentine's Day. That is actually the day we became official.
Great.
He gets me a teddy bear with a necklace around its neck. It's very beautiful. It's a little blue, I think it's a sapphire. Yeah, blue sapphire. And it's very pretty. And he says it's because it reminds him of a blueberry. And that was actually the nickname, like maybe a week prior, he started calling me because we had blueberries on our production line, and I just walk by and just grab a handful of blueberries and just keep eating them.
Shout out Panera.
That's how I got that nickname. Yeah. And we became official. And that's actually the first night we had sex.
Okay.
It wasn't great. It felt very forceful on his end. Like, he felt very strong. It felt very like I didn't have a lot of control over what was happening. And my sexual experience at that point wasn't
That's what I was going to ask. And again, you don't have to answer the following questions that I'm going to ask. But like,
you're good.
At 19, I assume, and correct me, that you hadn't had sex with other 40-year-old men. This was your first, like, every other guy, I assume, was around your age, which is a different, I wouldn't know from experience because I've only had sex with girls, but that this is your, that it's a completely different vibe.
Yes. It is completely different. And I didn't know that going in. I thought it was going to be very similar to my past sexual experiences because, like I said, I've had sex with people before. It just wasn't this experience. And I remember being kind of like scared, and we didn't talk about having sex before. It just happened. And that is something I've never experienced before either, is like I normally have very respectful partners or very respectful people in the sense of like they want to talk about sex before it happens. And if you don't, then it probably isn't going to happen because I'm pretty like, okay, bye. Like after a hangout. So this is the first night we had sex, and he tells me, oh, it was great, whatever. And he actually ended up coming inside.
That's what I was about to ask. Was it protected sex? Yeah. Okay. Wow. So
and that's why I said it came out of nowhere.
No communication, no condom, no ask if you're on birth control, no anything.
And I was not on birth control because I had been single since my ex, and I stopped taking it because I hate birth control. So
what was going through his head?
I don't know. He just told me, he's like, I didn't think you would let it happen unless you were on the pill or like unless you were protected. And I'm just like, what? And then he informs me that he will not have an orgasm unless he's condom free and it's inside of someone. He won't orgasm from a hand job. He won't orgasm from your mouth. Like, he is solely like inside of you without a condom. And I'm just like, okay. And I kind of don't say anything, even though it really bothers me. And I think it's because I was so alone and isolated that I was so worried about losing this one person that made my world a little bit better.
Yeah, it was a perfect storm.
Exactly. So I didn't want to lose that. And so therefore I accepted it. I remember cleaning myself up afterwards. I remember thinking, fuck, I have to get plan B. And so I got plan B.
Did he pay for it? Did you ask him to pay for it?
I told him, I was like, I think I need to take a plan B. I'm not on birth control. He said, okay.
It's so nice of him to just approve of that.
Yes. Okay.
Okay. So you get the plan B. You take the plan B.
I take it.
My question right now is like, so that first time you have sex, he says the orgasm thing, which insinuates we're going to have more sex when this will happen again. And this will happen again and again and again because I need to orgasm. And to do that, here's what needs to happen.
Yeah. And he told me that he doesn't need it. And that's kind of like another thing that was a red flag, is like someone telling you like, I only orgasm if I'm in you, but like I don't need it.
What a weird thing to say.
And that is such a batshit backwards thing to ever say to someone. It's the most confusing sentence I've ever heard. And so I wasn't necessarily under the full impression like it was going to happen again. I did feel like I remained some control over my body, and that felt pretty good. But I didn't feel like I was in total control over everything because there was a clear power dynamic that I just now looking back, I understand. But in the time I was just like, we're equals.
Yeah. Okay, so you take the plan B.
I get on birth control immediately. So I'm on birth control. I'm on birth control for the remaining of our relationship. That's the total amount. And things just start not feeling right. it's more of a chore to hang out with him than it is like fun, because I have to go to right down the street from the halfway house. He walks from the halfway house to a parking lot. He gets in my car. We drive to Panera. He calls them and tells them that he's there. And then after that, we go and hang out and we do our thing. So it's a routine. It feels good sometimes. It feels more like a chore other times, just depended on the day. And then we get to the next big event, which is like April time. I start not feeling well in April. I think it's like the last week of April, almost May. And I start not feeling well. I normally bleed when I'm on birth control, but this time I'm not bleeding. So I decide to go off of it for a week, and I don't have sex with him while I'm off of it, because I'm like, you don't know boundaries. So,
but before that, are you guys just having sex in the car, since like that's the only real place you can have sex? Okay, just curious.
Yes, we're having sex in the car. I liked some of it. I did. Other parts of it I didn't. I definitely did not love the fact he came in me, but once I was on birth control, I felt better about it, and I kind of enjoyed some things quite a bit in that aspect. And also, he would buy me food, and I didn't have to spend my paycheck on eating out. He liked to buy me things online as well. He liked to order me clothes, and he would send them to my house. He would spend his paychecks on me, basically.
All right, so there were some perks.
That's probably why I stayed, because like there's all like the shiny exterior on things, and then there's like the real dirty shit behind it. And so I was seeing a lot of this shininess on the top, promising me a future. He tells me like, oh, we'll buy a house together. We can move anywhere. I can finance our life, and you can figure out what you want to do with your life. Because I make money from graphic design. I sell my designs. I make money from tattooing. He's telling me that once he's out of this place, he will have all of these avenues of money, so that I don't have to worry about working all the time, and I can focus on my dreams and what I want to do, because at that point I was like, I don't freaking know what I want to do. So I'm falling for the shiny exterior, and end of April I start not feeling well, so I go off birth control for like a week time. And I tell him that he still wants to have sex, but I tell him no. Like, I was pretty firm because I was pretty scared about being pregnant. I never bled. And after you get off birth control, typically you bleed. Like that, even though it's not necessarily your period, you normally bleed. And I had nothing going on. So I decided to buy a pregnancy test just to see. Because I wasn't feeling well. I felt very like hungry all the time. I felt lightheaded. I just didn't feel good. And I've never seen something turn positive so fucking fast in my life.
That sounds so scary.
It was like 10 o'clock at night. I just got home from work. I almost peed myself trying to get to the bathroom because I was holding it just so I could take this test. And it turned positive. I'm sitting like there in the bathroom like, what the fuck am I going to do? Like, the feeling of when your whole body kind of goes numb and all you feel is coolness. And I'm just like, oh my God. So I hide the pregnancy test. I rush downstairs to my bedroom, and I don't say anything. I don't text him. I don't call him. I just go to bed. The next day we're supposed to hang out. I do our normal, routine. I go and pick him up, and we go to our park that we've been hanging out with because it's the pandemic, and we're sitting on the blanket. I think we're eating food. I think it's Chipotle. Not positive. But it was something like
a
that.
competitor.
Chipotle, so.
Don't tell Panera.
So I'm eating Chipotle, and we're sitting there, and I tell him I have to tell him something. And he's like, oh, what? And I pull out the pregnancy test, and I give it to him, and he opens like out of the little wrapper, and he goes, oh, and he gets excited.
No.
He gets happy. Yeah.
No.
Yes. He gets happy. And he tells me, he's like, this is like a blessing and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah.
At this point, have you told a friend?
and
Did you cry that night going to sleep? You were just numb, fell asleep.
I was still numb when I was telling him because I had zero clue what the heck was happening. And he's like, oh my God, like, what do you want to do? And I was like, I think I want to keep it. I don't know. And he's like, okay, cool. And he's like, he's just like, we can figure this out. He's like, I'm actually up to get out. I'm going to still be on parole, but I'm up to get out of this place in June. And this is the end of April, almost May. So like we are close to June. So that makes me feel better because if I'm turning up positive, I can't be more than like maybe 2 months pregnant. I really can't be. I'm excited. I'm like, yeah, like, that works. Like you'll start working right away. You can, I can eventually stop working. Like this will be great. Like I can have my little life, like this little independent life away from my parents. Cause like, I guess the biggest thing was independence at this time. And I didn't want to keep living with them. So I was like, okay, great. This is my opportunity for this independence. We were get in the car to drive to somewhere else. And I remember we were driving down this highway, and he turns to me, he goes, I do have to tell you something. And I was like, what? He goes, I didn't do anything to you.
What?
And I was like, yeah, exactly. That was my exact response. I said, what? Like, just like you, it did not make any sense. It was out of context. And he goes, I didn't get you pregnant. We did that together. And I need you to be clear about that. I did not do anything to you.
I don't even know. Like, I genuinely don't know how to react to that.
Exactly. And I said, no, I know how sex works, and like specifically between us, we, it was consensual is what I said. I'm like, this has been consensual. So
however, you made it very clear that you didn't want to wear a condom, which would be your 50% of the birth control that now I'm on.
Yes. So he just wanted me to understand that he didn't do anything to me and that I'm not some sort of victim. And I was like, I never said that I was. I never even hinted that this was a thought in my head. So I don't know where this is coming from, is what I told him. We kind of resolved that quick, and it was kind of blown over. And then a week later, pregnancy starts hitting me really hard. I start throwing up. I start feeling icky. I start feeling really, really lightheaded. Like the feeling I was feeling before, just like times 1,000. And I've never felt that shitty, but I'm still working full time, 40 plus hours a week, sometimes even more, closer to 50. I'm delivery driving. I'm working in the store. I'm working at the cash registers. I'm working at drive-thru. I'm working on the line. Like, I'm doing
You are the
way too
poster
many
child
things.
of Panera at this point in time.
At this point, yes, I was a hard worker and I was working my butt off. And one day, Alex decided to buy me prenatals, because at this point he was under the understanding I was keeping it. I was pretty sure I was going to keep it because of all his promises to me about how he was going to basically help financially and make sure that I didn't raise this kid at my parents' house. That was my understanding. And so therefore he buys me prenatals. I start taking them. I put them in the floor of my car just because it was easiest to take them. And I'm trained someone that day, and someone gets in my car and finds the bottle of prenatals. And they work with me. And at this point, no one knew. And she's like, she picks it up and she goes, oh my God, congratulations. And I was like, thanks. At this point, I didn't tell anyone because I wasn't sure what my feelings about it were. Like, I don't want to tell someone I'm pregnant and then be like, oh yeah, I had an abortion. Like, that's not something at this point I really wanted to have the discussion about. And if I'm being honest, abortion wasn't even on my mind yet. But I knew that I didn't want to tell anyone. And I think that was my subconscious, like having a backup plan, like a plan B in case shit hits the fan. So he's still being great. And then one day he doesn't show up when I'm supposed to pick him up and take him to work, because we worked the same shift that day. And he doesn't show up. I wait maybe 10, 15 minutes, but then I have to go because I have to get to work. So I show up. Anthony's not there. And I start to panic a little bit. I text him, I call him, no answer. So I'm like, okay, I go to work. Halfway through my shift, I get a call from him. He tells me he is not allowed to leave because they found his phone. He was not supposed to have a phone in there. And they went through his phone and they found out everything. They found out all the places we had gone together. We went to Boulder, we went to Denver, we went a lot of places. They found out all the GPS locations of where he had been, the pictures that he had taken with me, the pictures he had of me, just like stuff like that. And so they found all of it, and they wouldn't let him leave because they knew he was lying about going to work. So then he had to quit Panera, obviously. They put him on lockdown. They didn't know what they were going to do with him because he had to go in front of a judge. And this is the middle of the pandemic. So judge, like showing up to court, it's all virtual. So he does it at the place. He never leaves the place. He's still able to call me from the phones, like their phones and stuff, but we can't have like really any conversation besides like him updating me on what's going on.
Meanwhile, you're becoming more pregnant every day.
Yes. I'm panicking because I'm like, this changes a lot. I feel like he's going to, have to go back to jail. Like and he kept reassuring me that this wasn't going to happen. He would still be able to get out in June. Like
he has no idea what the fuck he's talking about.
Totally. Yeah, he was totally on this train of like, nothing changes, I'm just not allowed to leave right now. And then he asks a buddy for their phone, and he starts texting me off of their phone. And then eventually one day it goes radio silent, maybe a week and a half after he didn't show up for work. I text the number, and the number tells me Anthony's not here. He got picked up, but I have something for you. And I'm like, Okay. He wanted me to meet him outside of his work that day at like 2 o'clock. I go and meet him outside of his work at 2 o'clock, and he gives me like this envelope, and it had a letter from Anthony. It had just like his debit card from work, because we get a debit card, and then it also had like his ID and just random stuff like that, all his valuables basically in this little envelope. And the letter just basically read, "I'm so sorry that this happened. I'm getting sent back to jail, yada yada yada." It just basically said the same thing over and over again, like, "I love you, and I want the best for our family, whatever, whatever." And then finally he calls me from jail, and he tells me, he got sent back to jail, and they found everything about me and about what had happened. And he went in front of the judge, and the judge sent him back to jail. And the judge said that he was a pervert for dating me. And that's the other thing, because he told me what the judge said, that it was like, oh. Next day I go to work and I'm not good. I break down to one of my managers and I tell her everything. I tell him that Anthony is in jail. I tell her that I'm pregnant, and her jaw drops, and she's like, "Oh my God, like, I'm so sorry that you have to go through this. I'm so sorry that this is even a thing. I want you to know that I've had an abortion. I had one 3 weeks ago, actually." I was like,
This woman is such a
"What?"
blessing. Yeah.
I didn't even know she was, yeah. I was like, "I didn't even know you were going through this." And she's like, "Yeah, if you need anything, just know that that is an option. I'm not telling you that's what you should do, but it's an option, and I want you to be aware of it." That's the first time that abortion has really been a thought in my head. I knew it was an option. I knew it existed, but it wasn't really feeling feasible or like in my grasp at that point until she says it out loud. So I do more research. I get into the whole shebang of what an abortion entails. I don't know how far along I am yet, but I'm throwing up every morning. Absolutely freaking miserable. Pregnancy sucks. Every single part of it. I was crampy. I was moody. I couldn't hold food down. Like, food was disgusting. He's still in jail. We're kind of having these conversations that I am paying for, mind you, because you have to pay to talk to people in jail. And then his mom reaches out and tells me she's excited about the baby.
At this point, have you told your parents?
Nope.
Just
I haven't
your
told
manager.
a soul except for my manager. Yes. So I'm like, "What? That wasn't your news to share." And he goes, "But it's art." And I'm like, "No, I asked you to not tell anyone." And he's like, "I didn't know that included my mom." And I was like, "Why is this woman texting me?" And mind you, she's texting me every day, like every day, 24/7. And I'm like, I don't know how to feel about this person right now. I'm kind of mad at Anthony. I don't really want to talk. And then my parents say, "Hey, do you want to go camping?" Thought that was like my perfect escape. I have an excuse to not answer him or his mother. And I go camping. But here's the thing. You can't really hide throwing up in front of your parents in a camper. Halfway through the camping trip, they both look at me and go, "Are you pregnant?" And I tell them no. I lie. I lie straight to their faces. I say, "No, not that I know of." Like, I would know. We get home. My mom asks me to take a pregnancy test because she's pretty sure I'm pregnant. So I take a pregnancy test. The day after, we get home from camping, and I go on a walk with my mom around the block, and I tell her, "Yeah, I'm pregnant." And she goes, "Okay, where is he?" And I lie to her. I don't tell her that he's in jail. I don't tell her anything. I just tell her he moved. He lives in Arizona with his mom now. That's it. So I kind of just take full responsibility in front of my parents because there was absolutely nothing he could do.
What was your fear in just telling them the truth?
My parents have really high standards for me, and I have high standards for myself. This was not in character for me. This was completely out of character. I am a good kid. I'm a nice kid. I only dated people that were really sweet and genuine. And so me dating someone like him was out of left field, and it just didn't feel right for them. And I know it wouldn't go right with them. They would ask me what's wrong with him, and they would ask the really hard questions. And they probably would have helped me see his true colors sooner. But when you're 19, 18, you feel like you're an adult and you can make your own decisions and you're not naive to the world, you don't want to let your parents in on mistakes you're making. So I tell my mom, like, "Oh, he doesn't live here anymore. Like, he's gone. It's just me now." And she goes, "Okay, what do you want to do?" And I said, "I don't know." I actually look into it about Planned Parenthood and what it would take for me to get an abortion and, how much it would cost. I found out it costs about $500. my insurance would not cover it. I have insurance through my mom, who works for a Christian or Catholic company, so therefore they do not cover abortions. Their clinics actually don't even do abortions, so therefore I did have to go to Planned Parenthood. So I went to Planned Parenthood, and or actually what happened is I went downstairs the next morning after deciding, like, this is what I want to do, and I tell my mom I'm going to get an abortion, and she goes, okay, if that's your choice, like, well, you know, what makes you think that's what you want to do? And I told her, I was like, I don't want you and Dad to have to raise another kid. You guys are done. You guys have, you know, I'm an adult. My brother's almost in high school. Like, you know, you're done. You don't want any more little kids. She's like, that's true, but this would be your kid. I'm like, but I couldn't do it. I can't do it by myself. I would need so much financial help. I would need so much physical help. I am not in a good place mentally already. Am I fit to be a mother? No, I would not be a good mom. I mentally did not have the same mental health that I have now. I didn't have therapy at the time. My parents were really anti-therapy. So like it was stigmatized in my household. So therefore I wasn't getting any help that I needed at this exact moment in time. I go back to work. I schedule my Planned Parenthood visit on my lunch break at work. I call them, and you have to do you have to call them, set up the appointment, and then they have to call you 24 hours later and confirm the appointment. So therefore, like, you have 24-hour window to like really understand what you just made. And they kind of go over everything really fast. And that, you know, the guy on the other line was great. Like, honestly, no part of that did I feel judgment. No part of that did I feel like, oh my God, I'm doing something wrong. Because they were really nonchalant about it, respectful, and it was an easy process to make the appointment. Well, I tell my mom, she just, you know, she agrees to take me to the appointment. And that night, after work and after talking to my mom and she agreeing to take me to the appointment, my appointment is 1 week to the day away. So therefore, this was a Thursday, and so my appointment was going to be the following Thursday. I finally answer his call, and we talk on the phone, and I tell him, hey, I'm going to get an abortion. And he said, okay, I understand. All he said was, okay, I understand. And I said, I need your mom to stop texting me. And he said, I can't do much about that. I can tell her, but I can't control her. I was like, okay.
He'll block her.
If she doesn't, I'm going to continue not responding. Yeah. Like I can't have this in my life, because basically she's like preaching scripture at me and like pressuring me to like step up, and I need to be this person for him. And I'm like, I'm a kid. And basically I felt this like weight on my shoulders. I needed to take care of him. I need to be the person that puts money on his books. I need to be the person that makes sure his stuff gets picked up from the halfway house. Otherwise it's going in the dumpster. And I did all those things so naively because I felt this immense amount of pressure, because it was technically my fault that he got put there. I mean, it was my fault that he got put there. The reason he was...
Well, no, it was his fault that he got put there. Do you really feel like it was your fault that he's back in jail?
I did, because I think I wasn't completely understanding of the things he was risking to hang out with me and to be with me. So I was being very needy with it, and I was being very careless with it. Like, okay, I want to go to Boulder. I want to go do all these things, because in a relationship, I expect to not just sit at a park and talk all day. Like, that's kind of boring. So I did push the limits. I did kind of force that to be more expanded. And I don't feel like it's my fault. I feel like I definitely didn't help the situation.
Yeah, but this 40-something-year-old made a choice.
Yes. He made the choice to be with me. He made the choice to lie. So
okay, so you say you're getting the abortion. You say, get your mom off my dick. and what happens?
He says, okay, we get off the phone. At this point, I think he's understanding that we're not together, but I know I haven't said it out loud yet. But he tells me that there's a little bit of cash on the card that I have of his. And if I want, I can use it for the abortion. So I used part of it to pay for the abortion, actually, because he said I could. So I took that as here's the card for half of it, and here's my card for the other half. Well, my mom drives me to the appointment because I'm not sure what kind of abortion I'm receiving, because I have zero clue how far along I am. I have zero clue about any of that. So therefore, they didn't give me specifics if I needed someone to drive me. So I should come with someone. So I go in, and oh my God, this feels like a prison. I get buzzed in, and then there's like this plexiglass and a little peephole, and they're like, well, you know, name. And I'm like, you know, I give them my name, and then they buzz me through another door, and then it looks like a normal doctor's office, but it's like this really high security thing, and that freaked me out. I sat there for a minute. They gave me paperwork, filled it out, and then they sent me back to my car because it's COVID. A woman calls me on my phone and asks me a bunch of questions. Is someone forcing you to be here today? Do you feel like you have a choice? How's your mental health? Just stuff like that. And my mom's right next to me in the car listening to all of it. And I didn't lie. My mom was silent during all of this. She was just very much like keeping to herself, knowing that I needed to do this like myself and my way. They finally call me to go back in to go see the doctor. I go in and a woman escorts me back. I'm assuming she's probably an ultrasound tech or she's a nurse, either or. She's one of the two, and she walks me into a room. She's so nice and so funny and like lightens the mood a lot in the appropriate ways. And then she sets me in a chair and she's like, "Hey, I have to do an ultrasound. It's protocol. Do you want to see the ultrasound?" And I say, "No, I don't want to see the ultrasound." She goes, "Do you want to know if there's multiples in there?" It's like, "Yeah, I think that's something I would want to know." She goes in there. She's like, "There's only one. Do you want to know how far along you are?" And I said, "Yeah." She says, "You're 10 weeks and 2 days," is what she said. Like that was like pretty distinct. 10 weeks and 2 days. And so I remembered that number. And then she's like, "Okay, I'm going to walk you into a room and you're going to speak to the doctor." The doctor comes in.
Yeah.
I didn't like the doctor. The doctor was cold. The doctor was a little bit aggressive. She asks me if she can insert an IUD today. And I said no. And she's like, "Okay, well, I need you to understand abortion is not a form of birth control," and like gets really serious with me. She's like, "This will happen again to you if you don't get on birth control." And I didn't even have a chance to tell her. I was like, I was on birth control when this happened. Clearly something got mixed up. But I didn't feel like I needed to defend myself anymore because I knew for the rest of my life I would be defending my actions just to myself and to other people. And she's just being aggressive, and she finally decides to instruct me on how the abortion is going to go about. And she pulls out one bottle and she tells me, she's like, "You're going to take this today." The first drug that I had to take in front of her was mifepristone. And then she instructs me about the other, and she's like, "There's 2 doses of misoprostol," which I don't think I'm saying that right, but it's the second drug for the next day, and I have to take it exactly 24 hours, no earlier than 24 hours, maybe an hour after. I have to take it within this window. She looked at her watch and she goes, "Okay, you just took that pill. It's 11 a.m. You have 11 a.m. to noon tomorrow to take this dose of the misoprostol." And then she pulls out another bottle and she says, "This is another dose of misoprostol. 4 hours on the dot, you need to take your second dose because you are 10 weeks and 2 days. Therefore, we start prescribing the 2 doses after 8 weeks. So therefore I had to take 2 doses." And then she gives me like the warning list of like, if XYZ happens, then you should call a doctor. And here's pads. She gives me a little goodie bag of a clear blue pregnancy test that I had to take 6 weeks after the abortion because if I take it right after, it's going to still show up positive because I still have the hormones in my pee. And then it has a bunch of pads in there. It has a bunch of information, like a bunch of brochures about birth controls and just stuff like that. And I take my little brown goodie bag home with me. I get in the car and my mom's like, "All right, do you want to go get lunch?" And we don't talk about it.
That's like the worst part of this for me.
The next day, about an hour before I was supposed to take the medication, I was put the anti-nausea like in my mouth on my cheek and it dissolves. And I all of a sudden feel magical and better because I didn't feel like shit. And I was so happy that I had done this. I was kind of leaping around. I was happy it was over with. I knew it wasn't over with because I hadn't done the hard part yet, but I was so relieved that I wasn't tied to this man anymore. I was relieved that my future wasn't over. That I was still able to find myself and my own identity without having to worry and care for another living being. Adoption was really not an option for me for the sole fact that he wouldn't have signed away his rights, and that child going to him was not a better option than me raising the child. Me raising a child wasn't a better option than what I chose. So I knew for my own sake that this was a good thing, and I felt very, very relieved and happy. It felt like a breath of fresh air, like I could finally breathe.
Let me ask you something just to take you back a sec. When you said that your mom and you didn't talk, I just had such a big reaction to that, because to me that is very, very a painful idea of having such a weight that no one's discussing. But that probably wrongful, like that was just me viscerally reacting, and I try to be as neutral as possible. Was that hard for you, or was that what you needed?
Yeah. I needed someone. I needed a shoulder to cry on.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
I needed someone to support me.
I'm sorry.
And I never got it. My mom is a kind of a cold person, and I don't mean that in the sense of like she's a terrible mom. I just mean like she doesn't have the same empathetic feelings that other people have. Like she doesn't feel empathy for others the same way that I feel empathy for people. She's very much like that doesn't concern me type of person. And so the fact I had no friends, the fact that I had no support system, it was impossible. And I was off of work that Thursday and Friday because I had to take that other pill like the day after. But I was back at work by Saturday.
Did your dad ever talk about it?
So, no, but he knew. My mom told him. But they was avoided. And actually, my brother didn't find out until this year.
And to this day, it's like never
talked about.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
It's really hard for my parents to like have conversations and like, you know, have deep feelings. I definitely am trying everything in my power to not be that way, for my own sake, for people around me's sake, for my future family's sake. Like, I don't know if I want children, but for anyone in my life in the future, for their sake.
So you were saying you were at work and you remember.
Well, before I went to work, because I did have to go to work the next day after Friday. So I'd go back to work on Saturday after I passed the pregnancy. But I do remember when I was passing the pregnancy, I was on the toilet, and I can remember hearing, like, I did a lot of research about abortion. I read a lot of research about people regretting it. You know, I just did everything in my power to be as fully informed before I made my decision. And people talking about it looking like a little baby and I looked up what a fetus looks like at 10 weeks and 2 days, and it kind of looks like a little alien. This didn't look like anything. It looked like a clump of cells and a lot of blood. Like, it didn't look like a baby. It didn't feel this emotional attachment. I'm a nanny, so I love kids. I feel this attachment to kids that I meet that aren't mine all the time. But this lump of cells in the toilet just didn't feel like it ever had a soul or an attachment to me, because I don't think it existed in that type of way. It existed to potentially be that, but it never existed in that way. So I never felt sad. I never felt like I lost something. And I know that it's different for every person and every woman, but it definitely...
This was your experience.
It definitely didn't feel like that for me. I felt very like, okay, it's done with.
So where does it go from here with him? I mean, is that it?
Yeah, he's still calling me. I don't talk to him for at least like 4 days, and then he calls me and I answer, and I'm sitting in bed, and it's late at night. I was like 10 p.m. and granted, I wake up like maybe at 3 in the morning to go to work at 4:30, you know, whatever it was. So I wake up really early. So I was in bed already, and I decide to answer it. And I'm like half asleep on the phone, and I tell him, I was like, I don't want to be in this relationship anymore. I can't do this anymore. And he says, okay, I understand. You know, this is June, like middle of June at this point. I got my abortion on June 10th. So this is like the middle of June. And he's like telling me, like, I understand, like, I still love you, I still have all this respect for you, like, I still want to talk to you. And I was like, right now I just need space. I need space. And he didn't respect that. Like, for the next month or so, he was calling me almost every day. And
of course,
his mother was
the only thing on his mind. He's sitting in jail.
He did not get out like he told me. He never got out in June.
I'm shocked. Yeah.
He never got out in July.
Oh my God.
He never got out in August. And he got sent to prison.
Why?
When he still had a sentence to serve. So from the mistake he made before I met him, he had a sentence to serve from that. And he got out of prison early to serve that sentence under parole. He broke parole enough times where the judge was like, you can't go back to the halfway house. You can't be trusted.
What's the last you've heard from him?
Oh, that's fun. So last year I turned 21. He got out of prison 2 days before my birthday. and he still had my phone number memorized, and he called, and I answered. And I talked to him for maybe a week on the phone and over text. And then I finally told him, I was like, what you're asking of me, and you're still acting like we're going to get back together, we're going to have this life together, I don't want that anymore. If I'm going to be in a relationship with someone, it's probably not going to be another man for a long time. Like, to this day, I still can't even be in a relationship. Like, I have no sight of being in a committed long-term relationship with someone because I'm in therapy. I have, medication that I'm taking to help with like a lot of my ups and downs that I've been going through, but I'm nowhere near a point in my life where I'm like, okay, I can be compatible with another person and care about them. All I can do is care about myself right now.
Good. I'm glad you're doing that.
Yeah. And then I heard from him 3 weeks ago. That's actually what triggered me to
what did he say?
send my submission in. He 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago or whatever it's been, I made my account public because I needed to for a job opportunity. They wanted to see my Instagram. So I said, okay, like I made it public so anyone can go look at it. And I was only going to do that for a temporary amount of time. And he messages me and I see the little red dot that says request. And I click it and it's from him. And I'm like, what the fuck does he want? And I click it and he's like, wow, I'm so surprised. Like you let me follow you. And I sent him a question mark. And he's like, you let me follow you. You accepted my following request. And I was like, no, I just made my account public. So it must have just automatically allowed you to see my stuff. He didn't like that. He blocked me. So that's that.
I'm kind of glad it ended with just that, though. Okay. Well, do you know what my last question is?
Food? Something about restaurants? Yeah. Okay.
Don't make a Panera. What's your favorite? I show up in wherever you are, Colorado. Where should I go to eat? And what should I get there?
So I am obsessed with sushi. I just started eating sushi a year ago. So This is a new territory for me. But my closest friend that I live with, actually, she is Japanese. So therefore, I trust her on it's fresh and good. And it's ran by authentic, actually real Japanese people, not just white people wanting to make sushi.
Yeah.
And it's called Sushi Bistro, and it's in Boulder. And I highly recommend it. It's off Folsom Street. And every time I go, I probably spend more than $50. But it's some of the best sushi for the fact that we are in a landlocked state and we have no oceans near us. So
what's your go-to thing on the menu there?
I really like, I think it's called nagari, and it's cooked fish, and it's really good. And then I also like anything with salmon or tuna, like spicy salmon roll or spicy tuna roll. And
well, thank you so much for telling your story. Seriously, you said in the beginning, but we weren't recording, so maybe you could say it again. But like, this isn't. I was talking about how like I was such a snitch and like wanted to like. Could not keep my mouth shut, and you were saying, yeah, me too.
Yes. I straight up can't keep a secret, like when it comes to like presents or anything. Like I have to tell people anything I find out, anything juicy I find out, I have to tell someone. But this was so serious and personal, and I was so stressed about people looking at me differently that I decided to not tell a soul.